Hello, Yuri, and welcome to this recorded lesson for history. Today we're going to look at Winston Churchill in a little bit more detail. Okay, so probably our most famous Prime Minister of all time. Today we're going to have a little closer look at what made Churchill a great war leader. Okay, so learning outcomes for today. We're going to look at the popular view of Winston Churchill, sort of the one that's most popular with people today. We're going to consider the actual achievements and failings of Churchill as a leader, so what was good and what was bad. And we're going to study his words to appreciate why he was so effective during the war, particularly in the way he spoke. Okay, so we could write down that title, write the date in your book, and then we'll get ready to crack on. Right, guys, so we all know who Winston Churchill is. We all know he's probably our most famous Prime Minister of all time, okay? And this is the most popular view that dominates society today and what most people think about Winston Churchill, all right? Historians widely attribute Churchill with being the greatest statesman of the 20th century. One of Winston Churchill's chief attributes as a leader was his capability of inspiring people, regardless of seemingly ominous circumstances. The source of this inspiration was his own character. He did not permit a defeatist attitude. Winston Churchill was also an effective statesman and leader because he was possessed the attribute of strategic foresight. Example, he could see what was coming politically. Okay, so this is the attitude that dominates about Churchill, that says he was the greatest leader or greatest statesman of the 20th century. It showed that he had great character, a great way of being able to inspire people, but was a really good politician as well, who could see things coming and act accordingly. So he was a clever politician and a really, really strong and inspiring leader. And that is the dominating opinion of Churchill today and has been for the last 70 years. However, there is an opposing view. Okay, so Churchill was Prime Minister from 1940 to 1945 for 5 years, but was voted out immediately after the war, so in the same year that the war ended. If Churchill was such a great leader, why did he get voted out by the public and why didn't they want him to stay? Okay, so it's important for us to think about that many people don't actually believe Churchill was a great war leader, and there might be evidence to suggest that he actually wasn't. Okay, so it's going to be our focus of the lesson today, to try and find the good things about his leadership, try and find the things that might be not so good, and then try and work out what we think in conclusion. Okay, so we're going to be looking at those things for the rest of the lesson. Right, guys, now we're going to make our decision for ourselves. Okay, so I'd like us to draw out this table which says great war leader on one side and not so great on the other. So can we draw that with a ruler and then get ready to go through over the next few slides, reading the information and filling in the table, putting in the evidence that shows him as a great war leader in one side and the evidence that shows he's not such a great leader on the other. Okay, so pause the video, draw out that table with a ruler, and then get ready to read over the next few slides and decide whether we think Churchill's great or not so great. So first slide, guys, this is about his popularity. Okay, so remember, as we're going through, I want us to be filling in our table, finding the points that say he's a good leader and finding the points that say he's not such a good leader. Okay, so throughout the summer of 1940, Britain was close to defeat. However, surveys showed that 89% of the public thought Churchill was a good leader. There were many reasons why people felt like this. One was a belief that Churchill was well suited to lead the country in wartime. There were many comments like, he's a match for Hitler. People thought this because he had always been against Hitler, even before the war. A second reason for Churchill's popularity was his skill as a speechmaker. Churchill made many famous speeches during the war, often on the radio. He had a voice that people recognised and liked. In one famous speech he said, "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." People often saw Churchill in person. He often left his offices to visit factory workers or to show sympathy for people whose homes had been damaged by bombs. And finally, Churchill's popularity was the propaganda image created by the news, i.e. the newspapers, cinema, newsreel and radio. It was a very recognisable image, the fat cigar, unusual clothes and victory sign. He often wore military uniform. This propaganda image made people have confidence in him. Okay, so on this slide, we're going to be looking at things that show him as a good war leader, primarily. Okay, so go through there, find the evidence that shows him as a good war leader, and if you can find any that proves he isn't, then put that in the table as well. So stick it on pause, work through it again, and pick out your evidence to put in your table. Right, guys, hopefully our table is looking a little bit more full now. The next thing we need to look at is his military leadership. Okay, now we're going to look again at whether he was a good war leader or bad war leader. So as you're reading through, find the evidence that suggests he was good at being a war leader and find the evidence that suggests that he was bad. Okay, I will say that there is both good and bad on this slide. so read through carefully and make sure you have information on both sides of your table. Okay, place the video on pause again, have a read through, and make sure that table is nice and full of information showing that he was a good war leader and a bad leader. Okay, pause the video now. Right guys, this is the last slide full of information. Hopefully now you'll have picked up the way we're doing this, okay? So have a read through this one on Churchill's diplomatic skills. So his diplomatic skills is the way he negotiates with other leaders and other countries, okay? So have a read through his relationship with America and read through his relationship with the Soviet Union, or Russia as we know it today. Pick out the things that show he's a good war leader and pick out the things that show he's a bad war leader, sorry, okay? So make sure we're filling up that table. Make sure we've got at least 3 or 4 things on both sides of our table, whether it be good and bad, because we're going to need those for our assessment later in the week. Okay, so read through the America section and the Soviet Union section, find the things that show Churchill is a good war leader, find the things that show Churchill is a bad war leader, and put them into our table. Okay, pause the video now, have a good read through, and get that information out. Right guys, hopefully our table should be looking nice and full by now, and we've got plenty of evidence that shows he's both a great war leader and a not so great war leader. Okay, just to help you out, I've put a few things in my table as well, just to see if you got the same as me. So for a great war leader, a survey showed that 89% of the public thought Churchill was a good leader. It showed the public had confidence in him, and he created unity. Okay, so he unified his people, and that's a great war leader. Okay, he kept his people together and made sure they were all going in the same direction. That's good leadership. He appointed Montgomery in Egypt, which led to a great victory for Britain. So he dismissed the previous general there, put Montgomery in charge, and won a great victory for Britain in North Africa. And finally, Churchill put aside his differences with Russia and joined with them to help the war effort. Okay, so even though he wasn't necessarily friends with Russia, he put that to the side for the war to make sure that the Allies were stronger to fight against Germany. Okay, so he made deals with potential enemies to make sure he won the war. So that shows good leadership. Okay, things that made him not such a great leader that I got. He made a bad deal with the USA where Britain got 50 ships it did not need, only 9 of which could be used because they were in such bad condition. He didn't actually manage to get the USA to join the war. It was later that when Pearl Harbor happened that the USA actually joined. He also sent thousands of British troops to Greece and got defeated in only a few days. So the fact they got defeated in only a few days shows it was a badly planned attack, and Churchill should not have authorised it and should not have ordered it. Okay, so that's a sign of poor leadership there, because it seems like it's not planned and it seems like it's not very well thought through. Okay, so they're just a couple of the ideas that I've got there and put in my table. If you haven't got those, then feel free to steal them and pop them in your table to help you out. Okay, but hopefully you've got a few more things than that. There's plenty more positives and negatives about Churchill as a leader that you should have put in. I just thought I'd put those together to help you out a little bit, just in case you were struggling slightly. So pop the video on pause, just copy those down if you haven't got them. If so, get ready to move on to the last task of the day. Well done, guys. Right, guys, what I'd like us to do now is to have a look at our tables and pick which factors we think are the most important. So which evidence suggests it's the most important, okay? I'd like us to write the beginnings of these sentences and fill in the gaps, okay? So from your table, pick the biggest reason that Churchill is a great leader, and then explain why you think it is, and then find the biggest piece of evidence that Churchill is not a great leader, and then explain why that is a great piece of evidence that suggests he is not a great leader. Okay, so pick your most important pieces of evidence from your table and explain why they show Churchill as a great leader or why Churchill is not a great leader. Okay, and then write those paragraphs in your book. Have about 3 or 4 lines on each paragraph. Right, guys, final task then. We're going to have a look at how Churchill inspired the nation. Okay, so I've put an extract of one of his most famous speeches named "We Shall Fight Them on the Beaches" there on the screen. I'd like you to read through that. So pause the video, read through it, and then move on to the next slide and complete the task that I've put there for you. Okay, the main focus of this that I'd like to think about for now is what makes this speech so good. Okay, I'd like you to put 3 bullet points that show why this speech is so good. All right, so read through and pick 3 things out that makes this speech so good and so inspiring. Right, guys, hopefully now we've had a chance to read through that speech and the transcript of it, and we've picked 3 things that we think make it such a good speech, okay? I've put 3 of my own, which you can copy if you like. So it shows a positive attitude. So he's always showing that Britain in a positive light. He's always suggesting that Britain are going to win. And he's always giving British people the confidence that they're going in the right direction and that they will never, ever lose. This is really important to keep morale up in the country and the idea that people are going to win the war and it's all going to be all right in the end. Next, he creates a sense of togetherness by using we over and over and over again. By saying we, he's bringing everybody together, making everybody unite and creating a sense of togetherness, which is really important when you're up against it, like Britain was in the war at the time. Finally, it shows courage. It's showing everybody he won't ever give up. Okay, the moment that Churchill shows that he might surrender, that he might give up, people in Britain would start not believing that they're going to win the war, and they'd also be more likely to want to give up themselves. Okay, but by showing courage and showing everybody that he will never surrender and never give up, he is showing the country that he's there for the long haul and that he's with them and they're never going to lose the war. Okay, now you've seen these three things, I'd like to have a go at writing your own speech. Okay, it doesn't have to be too long, but make sure you're using a positive attitude and creating a sense of togetherness and courage. Okay, I'm going to be having a read through these on Churchill once you've uploaded it, so try and make them interesting and try and make them inspiring and inspire the nation that we're going to win the war. Okay, so use those three techniques and write your own mini speech telling the country that you're going to never surrender and you're going to win the war. Okay. Right guys, last thing before you finish, I'd just like to introduce you to your assessment which you're going to be doing next week before half term. Okay, so we're going to be doing the question, Winston Churchill was a great leader for Britain during World War II. How far do you agree? Okay, so you're going to be doing this in your next lesson. What I'd like to do in that assessment is give me 3 reasons why you agree and explain all 3 of them. I'd like to give me 3 reasons why you disagree and explain them as well. So you should already have a number of those in your table, but you'll be able to go and get more away from your time. All right. I'd also like us to finish off by writing a conclusion. So it must be a G-on conclusion, summing up what we think and explaining what conclusion that we've come to. So you can go away and do more research for homework. You're going to have 1 page of notes to take in with you to the assessment. All right. So use your table, fill your table up some more, go and do some research, watch some videos on YouTube, go on the internet and do a bit more research for yourself. Find 3 reasons why you agree that Churchill was a great war leader and 3 reasons why you disagree. Okay. And if you prepare all that in your notes, then you have nothing to worry about for this assessment. And I'll see you next lesson where you're going to have to write it up. Okay, so make sure you do your research and I'll see you next lesson. Thanks for tuning in to this week's recorded lesson. I'll see you next time.